except it's
We're
inverted.
live. It is inverted, but at least we're live now. So we're getting ready to start. Why are we inverted?
You said, I don't know. I don't know. Like, it's kind of weird.
You need to mute because everything that you're saying is going on. Thank you. How's everything going?
It's going good.
How's everything going?
Okay.
Okay, so I've got one person who understands why I have a disclosure slide. Because if I tell you something that you can act on legal advice, then you have to So you need to make sure that you understand that none of this is about advice. It's just so much. Okay, so I'm trying to make this interactive. So it's kind of look to your left. So look to your right. For some of you have someone who's next to you. Now, let me ask you a question. Not you, but that person. If you've got your complete salary for the year right now, or they did, again, it's not you, it's them. If they did, you think they would have money left over in February? But they still have money in March. Okay, at least I heard my first no. Okay. But they make it to my birth month in April. Okay, so maybe your answer for somebody else, because generally what I know from behavior from people who get lump sums, when they get lump sums of money, it tends to get spent. It doesn't tend to get saved. And besides, your employer probably wouldn't do it because they may be concerned that you would be getting on Indeed or someplace looking for a new gig because you already got this nice paycheck. Maybe they'll go and see if there's another company who would actually do that. But what I want you to think about is how we're going to actually build wealth, especially when wealth is often coming from paychecks. So I've talked to a few of you, and that generally sounds like where your money is coming from today. So we're trying to take the paychecks and turn the paychecks into wealth. So I'm going to say it differently. This time it's you, it's not that other person. So if I'm going to make it better. So if we said you got 10 years of that salary right now, for some of you, I believe that would probably make you a millionaire. By some people's standards, might be your standards. Would you be rich or would you be wealthy? Rich or wealthy? Often those terms are used interchangeably, but I'm going to give some definitions today. Now, one problem that you might want to consider is some people do the math by multiplying the gross income amount. So $100,000, let's just use that one. Well, that would, again, 10 years, that makes you $1 million. If you got it all today, do you think you would pay more tax or less tax than you did last year when you made the 100,000? More. Because now we're going to get you up into those higher tax brackets where you're probably going to give away 40, 50% depending upon what state you're living in. And if the word got out, I don't know if you have any friends, cousins. Ooh, you got some money now, huh? Oh, I heard you went to that M-Hub place, right? And I got an idea, I got a business idea. Why don't we go down there that you can invest in, and I'll go down, right? I mean, because those people would start showing up. So sometimes your heartstrings get pulled too. Because you're like, look, I got the money. So in fact, real story, somebody had a similar situation. And that started happening to them. It was early in my career. And suddenly, she went from having about $750,000 to $150,000. The market came like the 2008, 2009, some people, suddenly she had less than $100,000 left. But she at one point had that kind of money. So what I'd say is, for most people, that would make you rich. And why I'm saying rich is that if you needed that money to live, because that's replacing your paycheck, you won't be drawing down on that money. It looked nice sitting in the bank, but you're going to be using that money. So if you're using the money, which today we kind of get used to this bi-weekly paycheck for most people, that it keeps replenishing and it keeps replenishing. But if you received it all at once, it wouldn't get that replenishing. So now let's move on to wealthy. Well, actually, before I get to this part, so there's a term that is used sometimes. You may have heard of it, and it's called high earner, not rich yet. High earner, not rich yet. I don't really like that term based upon the definition that I gave you, but I think you can kind of get the idea that there are certain people who have a lot of income, but they're not quite rich yet. I like the term high earner, not wealthy yet. High earner, not wealthy yet. If I say it, though, it might sound like I have a speech impediment. Henry instead of Henry, but I'm glad some people are laughing, so you won't forget it. So, but not wealthy yet, because I put an icon of the money is in a safe. You don't need to pull it out. You don't need the whole thing out. You pull it out as you need it. That is what we want to get to in terms of wealth, not just simply having income. So I found this, and sorry I forgot to add the attribution to it, but I looked at something kind of interesting, and it showed that basically the top 10%, the bottom of the top 10% of income earners was 269,644. Some people are basically, making that bottom 10. That's like that's your one paycheck that you get, your first paycheck. So just think about that. It's kind of interesting. But if you look at the slide, let's say somewhere between the 60 to the 90, it starts kind of inching up slowly. But then suddenly towards the top, it starts to move up pretty quickly. I'm assuming that there are a few people that if you take yourself across the broad population, you probably look pretty good on that list in terms of income. But then I also looked at something about the wealth side. That was a little bit different, and the rankings kind of go a little bit differently. So in order to have basically $500,000, if you have $500,000 net worth, that puts you at the 80th percentile. Some people who are at the top or towards the top of the other one that we looked at, they're not close to this side. I feel sorry for some of you who are still dealing with that student loan debt. So even if you did have high income, you have demands on that cash. But now we can see exactly where we want to head, and probably as you're looking at the news and thinking about some of the policies that go on, you might think about who actually goes on the policies versus those policies. So kind of talked around being wealthy. So let's put a hard definition to that and say wealthy is another way of saying net worth. So when I was in this industry called investment advising early in my career, people would throw around this term of high net worth. It's like high net worth, exactly what does that mean? It kind of has this vague idea to me anyways, high net worth. But what does that actually mean? Well, what do you own? So for a lot of people, what do you own? Do you own your car? Do you own a house? Do you own money in the bank? Do you own a 401k? Those are things that you would say are things that you actually own, maybe it's cash in the bank. And then we subtract out what your debts are. So those student loans, sometimes people use fancier words, liabilities. I like to simply use the word debt. And then you might be in a positive or you might be in a negative. I don't want anyone to be too worried, especially if you're younger or you are just getting started in your career, because in some ways, one of the things to think about in terms of your earning capacity is that is your assets, per se, to then convert that into income, to pay down the debt. Veering for a moment, one of the problems that athletes often find is that they're getting a front load of their income early in their life. If you misunderstand taxes, you might actually have even more money. More people say, let's go to IMPA because I got a business idea. I don't actually know how to run the equipment, but I'm sure there's somebody smart who's that kind of person. So that's what we did. So just keep in mind that if you're thinking of your income in terms of being an asset, it's declining because, well, my mom's 90. I don't expect anyone here to be working at 90. Originally, she's from a generation that got pensions, so she still gets that. But I don't really think that many people, if any, in this room are going to be seeing that coming down the pipe because companies really didn't like the risk that they were taking on. So now at least we have a definition for what is wealth. We're trying to get ourselves to net worth. Well, a strange thing kind of happened along the way to make money. And I'm using a gentleman by the name of Mayor Stedman's framework. I'm blessed because I had the opportunity to read his book a long time ago, and he helped to inspire me, and I was actually fortunate enough to write a chapter in the book on so-called financial behavior. We can talk more about that later. But what he says is that we actually have three relationships with money. Usually in the financial services industry, we kind of look at them as, hey, I have an asset, I have income. That doesn't really tell you a lot about inside of it. So the first one is it's functional, right? Like I gotta pay for something. I gotta pay for my NPUB membership, my NSBE membership. I gotta pay for those things. So it's just very functional. When we pay our utilities bill, I don't think we ever get too excited about it. But then we've got self-expression. I used to work in the car industry. Yes, I used to work for Mercedes-Benz USA. So I started learning. Some people say, I got a Benz. I got a Benz. Now, today, I'll tell you, I drive a Prius. Now, you probably all have an input of what you think driving a Prius is. Some people might say, well, I aspire to get myself one of those, well, if you're going to be green thinking, a Tesla, right? Tesla. Because actually, I really think that styling on that crossover is amazing. But the people who were saying I got a Benz were trying to say something. In fact, I was the pre-owned marketing manager at the time, and I kind of knew that there were some people who liked the idea of Benz. So I discovered that there was a market that had been untapped at the time, which was African Americans who might actually want to drive a Benz. Well, but inside the culture, let's say the real culture of Mercedes, people would say, well, what kind do you have? You have a C-Class, you have an S-Class, and then they used to have this nomenclature that was really confusing. But you could tell that people wanted to be part of the club. And some of the people, which I found really curious, would buy, say, an S-Class, but they'd buy the X320, that's the lower end of the market. And then they would go to the parts department and and say, can you sell me the S600 label? Because I need to let my friends down or in the club, they need to think, because you probably aren't going to lift the hood, but if you lift the hood, you immediately would know they had the 320, but they wanted to be in the club because the way that they made it inside, you kind of think. So it's just interesting that self-expression. So for a lot of people, when we really look at the numbers, say in their budget and what they're doing, it's about self-expression. It's not so much like, food is food and certain things, but, $2 Chuck gives you one idea, but, the rappers told me about Cristal. I didn't even know Cristal, right? So we see the self-expression. I spent some time because to me that's huge. And then finally, it's emotion. Now, Malik will be up here in a moment. He works for an investment firm. So when the markets go down, the calls go up. Where's my money? How come my money went down? I don't like that. We have a very emotional tie sometimes to certain things that happen with the money, especially the expectations. Some government workers are expecting to get paid, not getting paid, so that's a problem too. Things that make us go to the negative emotion side. There's positive emotions. One of my clients, well, not longer my client, but said, well, I don't like the fact that you told me you're taking away my shopping sprees. I said, no, I told you to pay off your credit card at the end of the month. I didn't say don't ever shop. But then apparently they took that as a constraint on spending, and they didn't really like that. But it's my job to help tell people the consequences of continuing down the road, because it won't be very pretty, and I don't want to be there when it gets up. So we should think about, where does your money go? Often I will hear stories, usually from athletes. So let's just pick on them a little bit. I got a $2 million signing bonus. I don't even know where it went. Sometimes people will say about their checking account, I know what I signed up to get in terms of salary. It doesn't seem like that's what's in my checkbook. Where's the money going? So sometimes it's kind of above the line. It's in their paycheck because they don't understand how the taxes are working. And that if they're signing up for the health care, they got signed up for 401k, and all these other things, that's where money is gone. So then now it's what's left over is a smaller amount. Depending upon who you might be giving through United Way, you might believe in tithing. So then that's the money that's going away too, especially if you're doing that as an automated expense. There's things like insurance. Sometimes people do it through workplace, sometimes they buy it outside. It's important to know where your money's going, because usually when we get down to save and invest, which I put them before spend, that's not how it is, right? It's the spend goes before the save and invest. We'll see what's left over. I'm going to discern save from, hey, I could be saving into my checking account because I need to have a cash reserve. But when I decide that I want to give my money to an investment advisor or to an investment firm, that's investing, and I expect some kind of return off of that. Some people don't really like the idea of the investing. They would rather just save because they perceive it to be safer. But both of those, we need some savings where, in case something happens, we're okay. Because you remember the safe we saw earlier? In the safe, those people kind of think differently. Sorry, I had to prove that I was technologically competent, so I added some. And you may have to think that's slightly hard. So I meant to have this already out, just in case it's too small. So in case it's too small, see, for those who made it here tonight versus being on the stream, I thought I'd give you a little something that the streaming people aren't getting. But there'll be more tomorrow for those who attend, so at least tonight's a teaser. Okay. So, because I really want you to use this sheet, and for my new buddy who's in college and will be getting out soon, I want him to use the sheet too. Because under debts, which is the kind of the blue line in the middle, I put student loans right there. There's some other people I think who recently graduated. So let's get the student loans out there in terms of debt. Depending upon you, you might find that you're going to have a negative, and that's okay. Let's not worry about that. But what kind of things do you see that I have on the sheet? And I'm going to pick out a couple on the tax-deferred retirement, and there's the tax-free. I won't ask the audience. Most people will look at the statement, because we're used to looking at statements, and it says, we have this dollar amount. We have 100,000, we have 10, we have 5. So I've had people call and say, Mr. Brewer, I'd like to pull some money out of my account. And usually I ask them something like this, what's it for? Well, in one case, I want to help my son get into a condo. I just want some money and I got money in my account, so we have it. So the next question is, are you under 59 and a half? Well, yes, I am, or no, I'm not. So if you're under 59 and a half, who knows what's happened? They take 10% out of that balance if you decide you want to touch it. Now, I think of it this way, that they're saying that's the candy jar. Now, I don't know if you have a mother or have an aunt or someone that, try to go get a cookie too soon, they slap their hand. They're trying to say, this money is supposed to be when you retire. The government thinks you're not going to do that before 59 and a half. I don't know why they did it on the half birthday, but hey, they did. So then you got to pay 10% on your balance to get them, or on whatever you're trying to pull out. Well, on top of that, you enjoy, because it says like tax deferred, like a dream deferred. Well, not quite the same thing, but you get the point. It's deferred, so it is embedded with taxes. So you go to pull it out, you have to pay taxes. So this one person didn't realize what I'm telling her by the time she was going to give her son about 60 grand and realize that she was going to take a 40 grand, about a 40% hit on the money, including the 10%. She's like, well, maybe there's another way. So often, if you're just using this network worksheet, some people can overstate what they actually truly have in terms of wealth. When it comes to retirement accounts, I tend to think that if you're going to spend it, like I did the example when you get the income up front, if you're going to spend that money, it's not so much wealth, it's retirement wealth, it's replacing the pension that you otherwise would have had. Now, if you can move your money into the tax-free, the Roth IRAs, health savings accounts, anyone has, so I'm going to give you an answer ahead. Health savings account, if you invest the money, will grow over time. Some people use it like it's a spending account, but to think of it as a savings account. They can be invested similar to any other thing you may want to invest in. But think about using it down the road when you are, say, 70 plus for your health care, because at that point, you're going to have to pay for it. If they haven't taxed you when you put the money in, they didn't tax you while it was gaining all this nice money, and they don't tax you on the other end, it's a nice kind of account in the future, because I like ideas where I might be able to put something in for $1, it grows to $3, and I can pay for things for $3 when I only ever put $1 of my own money in the first place. And then there's a couple of other things that also fit in that category. So I'm giving you the classical sheet with some cautions on some of those, but it's always good to know your net worth. If you want to start a business, get a little business loan, they're going to ask you about your net worth. So it's just always a good thing to just kind of do an annual check on yourself. So this sheet should give you some guidance. And then there's the cash flow. So I'm picking on student loans tonight. So under net pay expenses, you'll see there's the student loan. Because you have the debt amount or the principal, and the principal has to get paid off, so it needs to go somewhere. I used to hate intermediate accounting. I hated that one professor, I should tell him now I finally got what he was trying to tell me. And the bad part is a bunch of people never ever had it explained and they never ever got it, because if you go and pay the least amount you can on those student loans, do you think that the principal gets smaller or does it get larger? Okay, good, I got some smart people in here. So it gets larger. So the sooner you can pay that off, so you might like the dollar amount that's lower on this side. The problem is you don't realize that on the other side it's not showing you what the true dollar amount is. So there's some advanced ways to look at things in the future that we can talk about. So typically we look at how much money are we bringing in if you're married, interest even on your CD or money market. And then, I think they should rename other income to side hustle. So, if you've got a little side hustle and you're making some money. Now, but, think about the side hustle that the IRS did. Oh, I didn't say that. Just think about the one that you get a form that tells you that it's formally a side hustle. Then we call it. And then there are these other expenses. So most people don't know, there was this joke that a long time ago about, well, hey, I'm going to make all this money. Well, no one knew what's FICA? And what, state income taxes. I lived in New York for a while. They even have county taxes. So there's all these taxes. So you originally thought you were making all that money, especially if you're looking at offers coming out of school. And, you need to find out some other things, because this part is usually the largest section of expense for everyone. It's usually the largest expense, especially if you are making income. Because we have marginal tax rates that, let's say it's close to 40%, to don't worry about the exact detail. But if you could actually have your money coming from investments, we could get that down to 15–20%. So that's a lot less money by people who turn their income into assets and are able to use that. And then if you have assets, then ideally one day you have a multi-generational transfer. Because one of my interests is, we have this wealth gap that's well known. But our wealth gap can only get closed by maintaining some of the income that we're getting, because again, some of us are on those higher percentages. But it's what we do with that income that then turn that into wealth and ideally change the lives of some other people in the future. And then finally, our traditional expenses. So it's key that we learn how to understand some of these concepts. We manage the income that we're getting so we can move that from just simply going out to something that's staying in our own accounts and ideally creating that bank. So hopefully, I've given you a path. We'll talk more about some other details. We had to understand what wealth is. So hopefully, at this point, you're starting to envision a brighter day, envisioning your own wealth. Some people might be winking at me that they already have some, but for the others, that you envision wealth. Do you envision wealth? You envision wealth. So then I know that you're ready to turn that income into book. Thanks. Other questions? Okay. I'll just leave the mic on. Yes. His name is, I better spell it, M-E-I-R, Mayor, Statman, S-T-A-T-M-A-N. I'm forgetting the exact title of the book.
You said you project ask for the
M-E-I-R Statman. I think he has about 3 books. I think it's the second one they wrote. But I can find out and give it to him. And if you're into books, chapter 19 of a book called Financial Behavior, you can go to Amazon, type in financial behavior. I wrote chapter 19 along with a good friend of mine, Chuck Self, and it's on biases in retirement planning and wealth management. I quote Mayor in that book too, as well as Snoop Dogg. So I'll let you go find it and you'll understand how I put Snoop and Mayor together. Any other questions? All right.
Let's see here. Let's see if we have any questions. I think we're good. All right, so are there any other questions for James while he's here? Mr. Brewer? No? So that means that everybody in here is going to be wealthy. You're going to invite me over. Yeah, okay. Awesome. So let's take a really quick break, and then we'll get all of our experts up. We have all of our presenters, with the exception of Mr. Rendell Solomon, who will be here tomorrow. We have him here tonight to chat with you all about wealth and finance and what we can do to assist our community in becoming wealthy. Okay? So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. We're going to get them up here, and then we'll continue with our fireside chat. Thank you.
right.
Yeah.
Did we fix the feedback?
Fix the feedback. Now there's feedback. So
Did we fix the
oh yeah.
feedback?
We tried to change.
I said, well.
Oh, no.
I saved all the stuff.
What time do you want to be? Like 7 at night? Maybe. I don't know about it. But it says, oh, it's like following this thing, they're gonna do it or whatever. Oh, things may be else. Maybe. It just all depends on I'll hit you up about it. Where is it though? Hyde Park? Oh, maybe. Yeah, I might as well. I live over there now, so yeah. Oh, nothing much. Just out here working, doing this. Yeah, I probably got the ridiculous. are you?
See what's going on.
Excuse me, everyone. All right, hello, I can hear my echo. My name is Jeff Becker. I'm the Vice President of Career Leadership Development for Chicago Scholars. A large part of my job is making sure that 3,000 plus first generation and low-income students from the city of Chicago get through college and into the careers that they decide to choose. And a big part of that is making sure that we teach them leadership, and a huge part of leadership is being able to build wealth for yourself and your family so that you can practice civic leadership, service, and engagement. I'm happy to have a great panel this evening for you. We're going to talk more about how to build wealth, the importance of wealth creation, and some important key topics and hot topics that are going on inside of the community. So I'm going to call each one up, and as each one comes up, as proceed, we'll have these introduce themselves. First, we have Mr. Kendall Parker. Coming up. So, Mr. Liz Jordan. And Mr. James Ward. And last but not least, certainly, Mr. Malik Murray. All right. So as we get started, first, if you could introduce yourselves to the audience and talk about what you do, your role in wealth creation and finance, and I'll start at the end with Mr. Parker.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kendall Parker, President and CEO of Parker & Associates. I've been established for about 10 years. I have undergrad in finance, master's in education, and I've been volunteering in the community with my organizations, Cap Outside and 100 Black Men.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Melinda Jordan. I am affectionately called MJ the Closer. I am a real estate broker with Coldwell Banker. I hold an undergrad degree in marketing journalism and MBA in marketing, and my focus is on residential real estate.
Well, we're going to start talking about our education. So I went to General Motors Institute for my undergrad and MIT for my grad school. I'm a certified financial planner and fortunate family.
I don't know if that means anything, but my name is Malik Murray. I am born and raised in Chicago. Went to St. Nation's High School, went to Point University, undergrad and grad. I was fortunate enough to play basketball at Point University as well. For the last, now 15th year, I'm in Aerial Investments, where I'm the Senior Vice President, Institutional Marketing Client Services. For those of you who don't know, Aerial Investments is the first minority-owned investment firm in the world, founded in 1983 by our chairman and CEO, John Rogers Jr. You may be familiar with our president, Willie Hassel.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for joining us. I want to start with a pretty simple question that's open to the panel. Why is wealth creation important? Why is it important specifically for Black youth?
I'll go first. There's a lot of paths you can take this answer now, but I'll limit it to a few. The wealth conversation of Black community is a relatively recent one, quite frankly. We're probably second generation in when it comes to Blacks and other people together. when you look at the kind of the founding fathers of entrepreneurs in this country, wealth is something that they've been having conversations around for centuries. So you think about the genesis of Pittsburgh, for those who may have roots from Pittsburgh, the steel industry, Carnegie Mellons, names you're familiar with. They're the founding fathers of Pittsburgh. You think about John Hancock, the building downtown. Just people who you may have read about in history books, but really are the prototype entrepreneurs of yesteryear. That is the definition of wealth. You don't have examples of that in Black student. So that really should resonate with us in regards to how far behind we are. One of the things important for us is the impact of having wealth and what it enables you to do. So if you want to look at Chicago politics, which doesn't have the most positive reputation around the country, in order to have political power, you need to have means. And so you look at the political leaders in Chicago and the state, quite frankly, in the last 10 to 15 years, they've been wealthy individuals. You look at our outgoing governor, Bruce Rauner. He made his money in private equity, GTCR. If you look at our incumbent governor, Jimmy Pritzker, he also made his money in private equity. So you look at the power that those two gentlemen have in regards to not only influence, but money, it is indescribable. But those two individuals are not African American. You think about Bloomberg, who was once the mayor of New York City, successful entrepreneur. So I give those two examples, 3 examples, to say wealth is more than just what it allows you to buy. Wealth is more what it allows you to influence. I had a conversation the other day about someone what lasts more, wealth or power. Well, one comes before the other, but one lasts longer than the other. Power is living legacy and legacy after you. Wealth is something you have through your lifetime. Just a couple of things for us to think about in regards to what our community needs to be focusing on from a mindset standpoint going forward. How do we follow that? Great point. I come from a back angle of what Malik was talking about and talking so well, maintaining it. I spend a lot of my time in the community working with our culture, Black and brown individuals, and trying to provide structure. So I kind of see it on the back end where I see the 1099 BTUs and the funding that's coming in, and I have folks who come in and kind of lose focus of how to maintain it, like Malik mentioned, for your lifetime. So I spend a lot of time, assisting folks in starting up their businesses and understanding it's part of small business, how to maintain it, not to just be a sole proprietor, making money and hide it, not avoid taxes. As you mentioned J.B. Pritzker and Bruce Rauner and how they maintain it well, which we haven't heard them complain about any tax-related issues. So it's those tips and research that I look into and dig and try to find to bring that to the community. And that's the impact that I try to provide, educate others, and maintain wealth, the impact of wealth.
I echo both sentiments shared here. What I come across as a realtor, sadly, you get to see the disparity within the city of Chicago and around the world. And a lot of that's because many of us are first generation homeowners. So when you think about it from a context of our backstories, who we are, makes us who we are. However, you need to consider what is it about your background, what are the things you take in that you keep and what things do you spit out? And what I coach often, because I am the entrepreneurship chair for the National Black MBA for Chicago, one of the things we talk a great deal about is changing our perspective from a side hustle to operating a business. Because it's through operating businesses do you have access to the resources and tools and platforms so that you don't have to pay those large tax sums. So when you think about the Trump administration and the changes around taxes, that benefits me as an entrepreneur. But as a side hustle, it does not. So what I often coach number of my mentees is always have a spirit of learning. And that's, I think, for us is the gap. We don't want to do the work. Be committed to always being in a position to learn and to want to know more and keep asking questions. Because it's only through that are you able to tap into the expertise for people on this panel and others that have that knowledge base. And once you have the knowledge and you can activate some of those activities, you are creating wealth, if not for you, for that next generation. So that's how I feel about wealth building in our community is we've got to acknowledge what those gaps are that we just don't have. And we've got to have, we've got to be resilient and relentless about knowing and learning and knowledge.
I can just add that it's power for good. And I was kind of thinking about Black Panther for a moment, but it's power for good. So when you can influence, somebody needs a job, you can give them the job because you own the business. Somebody needs some funding to go into a school, you have the influence because you know somebody who can make that decision and the money gets funneled to that place. So many of the things that I think we're all talking about are structural problems, but once you have the coin and you can make the decisions and you, along the way, get the influence because people show up. They weren't showing up before as your zeros, those before the decimal point, start to grow.
Yeah, a quick informal survey. How many people in the room either own a business or would like to own a business in the future? Most of the room. And I ask that because there's directions and pathways I want to go with our panel because we got a wealth of knowledge here, and that's good to know. In regards to mindset, when you talked about a wealth mindset, I think that's something that in our community we oftentimes miss out. Obviously, you all have practiced and learned or honed your craft. You've grown your wealth mindset. Can you give some practical ways our audience can begin to do that? Are there books? Are there classes? Like, how did you all learn how to manage money, how to manage your finances, and then to grow that wealth mindset?
I think, wealth goes very for the individual. But I think what's very powerful for the Black community is to figure out what wealth looks like for you. So, for example, white counterparts, when you talk about retirement, it's not uncommon to say we have a home in Minnesota and we're there in the summertime to hang out with our grandkids and with our kids. But as soon as that snow hits, we're going to Florida. We have a condo on the ocean and we're playing golf and we're hanging out with friends, and we have just 2 sets of friends that we hang out throughout the year. And all the while, they're living their best lives and they're not going to work. Versus our community, a lot of times we associate retirement as we're not going to work anymore. And that's a completely different mindset. And so we need to find what that means for us. One of the most powerful ways to do that is to see what it looks like. So I'm a golfer, just like that. And there are times throughout the winter where I'll go to Delray Beach for a weekend and hang out. And every time, I've been doing this for the last 2 years, and I'm just there over Christmas break. Every time I'm there, I am in complete awe on wealth, from how people live, what people drive, going to the restaurants every night. And every day, no one like us is there. It is amazing. For the last 10 years, the theme has persisted. So we need to define what that means for us. How do we get there real quickly? We have to change behavior. Because we're so new to the wealth conversation, we think that we need to show people that we have wealth. So that may be buying a bigger house than you need where you are in your life. That might be buying a more expensive car than you need or actually can afford. That may be eating out of restaurants more frequently than you need to. That's spending money. That's not creating money or making the money that you earn more for you. So that's what I mean about change in behavior. So we have to define what that looks like and then come up with a plan to get there. And I think that's where expertise of James can come into place because he's an expert in regards to financial planning. So you can sit down and map out what that looks like. I'm leaving with this quote before I hand on to my fellow panelists here. I'm a big reader, a big reader of quotes. So one of my favorite quotes is, a goal not written down is merely a wish. And so if it's not on paper, it doesn't mean anything. When it's on paper, that means you're holding yourself accountable. So if you have wealth aspirations, you write it down. The next thing to do is hold yourself accountable and execute.
For me, I've made all the mistakes we all make. Therapy for me was shopping, in my 20s. And in my 30s, when I bought, in my late 20s, when I bought my first piece of property and those resources had to be shifted, my attitude and my behavior shifted. So I started setting goals around reading material. I started putting pictures up on my vision board of people who I aspired to be or people who I wanted to know about. And what was important to me is that those people be diverse. I didn't want a Black perspective, a white perspective, a male perspective, a gender perspective. I wanted everyone's perspective. So I would have, Warren Buffett up, Oprah Winfrey, and I would go and read books that they had written or things about them. And I would look for themes. And so I synced that up with who am I? And then I went to look for someone in my family. Like, my family was a visionary. And I learned that it was my grandfather. And I'm from Mississippi, and my grandfather, on a third grade education, bought 600 acres of land. And how he was able to accumulate it was, and couldn't read, he could only sign with an X, is that during those days, they used to sell home whiskey, and it was illegal to sell the whiskey. But our white counterparts loved his whiskey, so he would they would come and they'd have money, so he would trade it for land. While other Black people would share property. My grandfather was like, yeah, I'll give you this, but you gotta sign over so much land. And so over the years, he accumulated all this land, a man, third grade education. And so I knew that I had that in my spirit. So how do I do that? So I started reading. I started going places where people had what I wanted. And I spent time with them thinking, asking them to mentor me. And so every month I pick a book and I'm diving in. And I keep notes, I journalize. Every year there's a quote that guides my life. There's a word. This year's word is be courageous. So that means I gotta get outside of my comfort zone and learn something else about creating wealth. I started living way below my means. I drive the same car I drove 15 years ago. My condo is, when I moved to Chicago, I bought it and I paid cash. So the three biggest expenses in your life is how you're living, your medical, student loans. So think about it. For 2 years, I haven't had a mortgage or rent. For 7 years, I haven't had a car loan. So all those resources that would have gone to that, my advisor is placing it somewhere. But I'm living the same great life. So it was just reading, being inspired by people, and just keep pushing myself to be uncomfortable. Because as Dave Ramsey would say, live like no other now so you can live like no other later.
Similar to Melinda's story, life kind of pushed me in that direction, Jeff. Or have an entrepreneurial spirit. I was born and raised on the southeast side of Chicago. For anybody that's familiar with the history, southeast side, there were factories, plants, steel mills, whatever you call it. And when it kind of dried up, you saw a shift in the community. You saw a shift of folks who now boarded up homes, etc. And so it was at that point, in the first, let's get the first impression right now. But, my grandmother basically laid the nugget. She talked about keeping multiple irons in the fire. Now, being a kid, hearing that kind of message, you really don't know what it means. But as I began to travel on to college and take business courses, and you tend to learn about multiple streams of income. Not just being satisfied with just your W-2. And as Malik talked about traveling, I took my first snowboard trip to Canada when I was in senior year of college. Last behind my 40, it's a whole other story. But you have that experience and being the only one in the mountain snowboard, falling, not keeping up, and you got young, non-black kids, skiing like professionals from heights, jumping. So it's like it was that motivation of saying, I need to come back. And how can I come back here? Reestablished in a manner where, we're not, I hate to use a slang term, Robert, you pick Paul, but that's what it is sometimes when you're not structured and focused. But it was that mindset of this, in your home, not seeing the appropriate structure. You gotta make a stand, you gotta make a change, right? It's insanity, you do the same thing over and over, hope for a change, you do the same thing. But it's the definition of insanity, right? You don't do the same thing over and over. And if you pay attention to the foundation of everybody's story, it's some kind of hope, some type of affirmation that we all continue to find or go by. And mine was unsuccessful. Unsuccessful people do, unsuccessful people are not willing to. So it's that thing, that model, that thing that drives me. And your network, right? Once you get around a circle of folks who are pushing forward, and if you look left and right, to me, this is the start of your network of making sure you're around like-minded individuals who move forward. And that continues to kind of drive that thirst of entrepreneurship and success.
So I heard some really critical things, and I want to just kind of make sure I pull it out because I'm always about practical tips. So first I heard, what did you say, find a mentor? You don't have a mentor, find a mentor. I heard you talk about wealth being and requiring planning and sacrifice. Planning and sacrifice. I heard reading. All of you talk about the importance of reading as a habit. So I don't know if any of you all out there have made reading a habit as part of something that you practice, but I encourage you to do that. I was reading Barack Obama about his reading habit, reading an hour a day, that he planned that in his schedule, that he can practice growth mindset continuously. And that's something that I've done too, and I think it's very important. Melinda, this question is for you. I know I was looking online about the number of millionaires in America, and the majority of millionaires in America have made their money off of real estate. Often we hear that, and it's a broad term. There's a lot of areas and a lot of ways to practice and practice the real estate. But for you, how did you start? Where did you start? What are some tips to start for our audience?
Okay, you're right. Real estate is to try and peel back, but how I got started really had to do more with my sister. My sister just had a child, and she was living in Section 8 housing, and I did not like the quality of the housing. So I started looking at tax liens and ended up buying a property for $2,000, rehab the property, put my sister and my nephew in the home. So at that point, I was like, wow, I can do this. But at the time, I was still working my corporate job. And so my tax guy said to me, you've got to find some way to shelter this money. You're single with no children. Here are ways to lower your tax obligations. And so I started buying single family homes under a certain price point because I knew how much I did the math with my advisor, how much income I needed to bring in. And so as my corporate job would move me around, buying property was my hobby. So just to give you some perspective, Chicago's my 5th city. So by the time I got to Chicago, I had properties in 6 states. And so I kind of fell into it because I needed somewhere to shelter it. But when the market crashed, I lost quite a bit. That's where my learning came. My failure is what freed me. So when I got to Chicago, by that time I had 10 years experience as a landlord and rehabbing. So imagine having to fly to those places, check on them, evict people. I said, I can do this. So I started reading more about real estate beyond just creating cash flow and started looking into what are other opportunities. So you probably see a lot on television around flipping, right? Real estate is sexy now. I'm here to tell you there's nothing sexy about real estate. And so what I decided was I don't have the temperament to be a full-time flipper. So I had to decide what was right for me and my budget. And what I started doing is, even here in Chicago, I diversified my portfolio. Cash flow gives you freedom. Capital gains play, that's flipping. You're gonna be taxed on that, so you gotta work that out, how to make that work. So what I started doing here is I said, because of the Illinois landlord tenant laws, I might burn something down if somebody don't pay my rent. So I changed my perspective in that what I do in the city of Chicago is more, I would say, I call it lipstick on a pig. I buy a property low, whether I buy a wholesale or through the auction. I go in, I clean it out, I might fix one major problem. And then I put it back on the market and I market it as a 203K rehab. Because I know everybody watching all the rehab shows, now everybody think they're rehab. So I started diversifying my portfolio. So what I would tell you as a real estate investor, you have to do the math. You don't fall into real estate because real estate is the type of business, if you fail, it costs you. It's tangible money that you're losing. So teaming up with people, an accountant, an attorney, an advisor, to help you structure not only what you need to be profitable, but also what's your risk tolerance level. And once you decipher what your risk tolerance level is, it'll tell you what type of real estate is most conducive for you to invest in. So that was kind of my journey. So I've been an investor close to 20 years, and it's been literally trial and error. I've just gotten to where I'm somewhat comfortable with my investments.
Thank you. So, quick story. I own a business too. So, on top of working at Chicago Scholars, I'm web development, mobile application company that I've had for 10 years. And last year was the first time that I had a professional do my taxes. So when he did my taxes, I noticed that the return that I got was significantly higher than what I had the previous 3 years where I actually had to pay taxes. So he went back and looked at my previous returns and amended them. And 2 years in a row, I forgot to add some very basic things where I ended up getting amended returns near $20,000, right? So he went back and just looked for my sake of looking at previous returns, and I had been doing this for years. So my question to you, Kendall, is maybe you can speak about the importance of having a qualified tax professional in your world and why having your tax prepared by someone professionally versus trying to do them on your own, just basically the benefits of that is being a tax professional.
It's a combination of a couple of things. In most cases, you guys are engineers, so you don't really pay attention to tax laws unless you have to. And when you do research, it can be kind of vague or interpretation, I understand. I think the importance of having a professional, obviously, is they will ask you certain questions that will trigger other things or prompt this professional to kind of find other ways to save you. Not save you money, but kind of find other deductions. I had one client, I'd like to give an example, who owned 4 properties, worked full-time, and just had just a lot of miscellaneous things. And he thought that by hiding his assets and by hiding his income, that he was saving himself taxes, when in fact, he was causing himself more. So when I finally got a chance to sit him down and we went through everything, I was able to explain that half the equipment you're purchasing, half the vehicles you want, half the building you want, you can depreciate half these things, which, as Linda mentioned, serves as a shelter. And so once we pulled everything back, similar to Jeff's experience, you got a chance to see the return a little higher, and it was kind of like no harm, no foul. I mean, when I got this guy, he pretty much owed IRS, let's say, I want to say around like 11, 12,000. By the time we were done amending the return, going backwards, it was like a $3,000 amount that he owed IRS over 2 years versus 19 years. So, and honestly, you should be able to have dialogue with whoever's preparing your taxes or wants to do your bookkeeping and things like that. You should want to have dialogue. You should want the person to kind of teach you or talk to you about why you have the savings. You don't want someone to just kind of prepare your return, give it back to you with a number, be like, okay, I walk away with $4,000, thank you. Because some folks can put stuff in the return that don't belong. And once you get audited, if you're not prepared for that, you will owe or whatever that tax preparer put on your return. So keep in mind, you are the person who's responsible for your own tax return. It's not the professional, it's not the TurboTax, it's nobody but you. When it comes to an audit, it's you and the IRS auditor in that room that you ask for someone's with. So you should know what someone's putting on your tax returns prior to submitting.
So words to the wise, that means that uncle or that neighbor that says they can do your taxes for you for the hookup, you pay for what you get, right? That's in all things. Malik and James, I was reading that the average median net worth for white households is around $110,000 in the U.S., whereas for black households, I believe it's $6,800. For white, for Latinx, around $1,150. And the statistics also kind of alarming because it said by 2053, most blacks in this country would have negative net worth. If you could talk about the importance of financial literacy and maybe some of the work you both do, I know you both are part of organizations that do work to reach people earlier, sooner, to kind of change the outcome of that statistic.
I'll go first. I think, so Ariel has a grammar school in Southside Chicago that bears its name, Ariel Community Academy. It's been open since 1996. So we're in our 23rd year, K through 8, full-time financial literacy curriculum. Incoming classes manage $20,000 portfolio when they have to take on increasing responsibility as they contribute through the years. In the 6th grade, they have completed time in the portfolio. All proceeds by the time they graduate 8th grade are split in half and go one of 2 ways. One goes in the form of class gifts, so teaching the importance of philanthropy, give back. The other half goes to each student 529 plan, on which we match $1,000 per student, so teaching the importance of saving for college. But the reason why I give you that example is that we believe financial literacy is a second language that's not being taught. You go to schools and learn Spanish and other languages, you go to high school, learn wood shop and auto. But the one language we use daily, that's financial related stuff. Credit card management, mortgages, cars, checking accounts, savings accounts, real estate. From sun up to sundown, you are dealing with finances, whether personal or somebody else's. And so the fact that we're ill-equipped as a community, it's just morally irresponsible. It's not our fault. I like to say we didn't have the same head start as some of our counterparts did, but blacks have obviously shown a history of being resilient, so we're not going to make excuses now. But at the same time, we need to be fully aware of what's ahead of us and the challenges that held us back, quite frankly, today. So, not being afraid to admit what you don't know, and having courage to make adjustments and change behavior is very critical today because one of the things I like to joke and say is, even though we're in the second and third generation of kind of one conversation in our community, my job, I travel a lot, and I'm in New York at least once a month. And I joke and tell my friends back in Chicago, like, you want to feel money? Go walk 2 blocks in Midtown Manhattan. When you go to Chicago, you see some nice cars here. You see those same cars in 2 blocks there. Everybody has it. It's no big deal. People talk about Maybachs and Range Rovers. Oh, that's nice. You can see one in 5 minutes in New York City. it's just so surreal. From the way men dress to women in finance. I mean, it is just the norm. And so it just, and none of us, they don't look like us, by the way. Not even close. I mean, they just don't. And so it's just a little daily reminder of just how far behind we are here and across the country. So for me, it's just constant motivation to be a part of that work. Now, I will say, one of the things that's really important to take away when I pass on to James is you have to really embrace the importance of being a lifelong learner. And that means accumulating mentors any chance you get, whether they're black, white, or what have you. I met a gentleman recently over the past years, an attorney, he's a partner of one of the big firms in town, white guy. Somehow he just took to me. And he's recruited me to join this country club for about. And you know, I saw that, you know, the welcoming fee, we call it initiation, whatever, and I was like, that's a lot, bro. But then I had to think about it, why is he bringing this to me? Am I you know, am I stuck on the price to join? Or should I be focused on the network he's trying to pull me into? And so I had to readjust my thinking. Because if I'm stuck on this, then I'm excluding myself from opportunities that he can bring me into and lets me in from day one as a white guy. So, you know, whether he's labeling himself a mentor to me or not, that is a mentoring moment in regards to how I should be thinking. We talk about side jobs. His side job is doing the legal work, structuring private equity deals for micro-cap companies. That's his side job. So he's taking small companies that you all create as engineers and find a way to take them public. And he's a partner in a major law firm. So I'm like, I see why this is Trump changed to you and why you're coming to this conversation, because you're like way up here. But for some reason you see me as a black guy say, it's not much difference between what I do and you do. You should be up here too. So those mentors that can really take you to the next level, allow to them as often as fast as you can, and taking all that knowledge, because those moments can be so transformative. You have no idea.
I'm going to start with, I finally recall the answer to the question of the Mayor Stavin book. It's what investors really want, what investors really want. If you go to Forbes.com and Google my name with Forbes.com, you'll find that I'm a contributor. I was a huge blessing. I wrote an article on estate planning. You'll see the color of the family that I put on, because I know that when we hear the word estate planning, we don't see anyone that's about as dark as you, and I did that on purpose. I'm able to write and say things. But I talked about Prince, and I talked about Aretha. They didn't have wills. They didn't have trusts. They didn't have foundations. We could have had a really, really big party for those of us who are Prince fans with the money that essentially Donald Trump is getting to do whatever he wants to do with it. It's a large chunk of change. Plus, the state of Minnesota takes another 16% or up to a 16% cut, so I'm sure that he's up at that upper range. And Aretha, who knew that this day was coming, unfortunately, for whoever couldn't get her to change her mind and actually to write some things down. And people like my mom think, well, it's gonna go to her family. Mom, it's not that simple. There's many millions of dollars that aren't going to that estate. that could have gone to somebody else to do something that grows the wealth. So that day, or those 2 days, the wealth gap widened. The wealth gap widened. Now, hopefully a few of you in the audience will get a chance to get to that kind of wealth. So I told you tonight, so make sure that you don't let the same thing happen. And as we've learned from you, we need to make sure that we're seeking out advisors who actually know more than we do about a topic. If you walk into an advisor and you're educating them on stuff, then you need to go find another advisor. Mindset to me is such a big thing. So as Malik's mindset has gotten to the point that, hey, you know, maybe I need to reconsider this thing. Why did it come to me? When you don't get into certain rooms and certain audiences, maybe there was something to being in the audience. Having worked at Mercedes-Benz USA about 20 years ago or so, I had the ability to read some research. So when I told you in my chart about what are you spending your money on, what are the percentages, those people that you might have seen drive my box, whatever the heck they're driving, wherever the heck they're living, the percentage of their income compared to yours for the same thing, or often with some people who think they've got some wealth, I know that the percentage was chump change to them. So we've got to watch what we see because we can't see what's in their bank account. People don't walk down the street with their brokerage account. I was blessed that I did get into business, so I've got one client that if he and his spouse walked in this room, you'd have no idea that they're worth several $1 billion that's not going anywhere, that's going to their next generation. So when you have a mindset that says that, to me, it's not so much sacrifice, but it's a return on the investment on choosing not to go do this so that can happen. And often, even if you're single, if you find a bigger cause, and this is my last comment, find a cause bigger than you. If the cause is bigger than you, and there was a guy who was a social worker who saved up $11 million, you can Google it, because he said what he saw happen to his brother, he didn't want to see happen to anyone else. So people laughed at him while he saved and he saved and he saved, but he gave $11 million.
That's a real example, JB. We actually had a gentleman who was a plumber, who was not a member of the 100 Black Men Chicago League, $300,000 cash to the organization. He was a plumber, no college, high school diploma, worked his whole career. So this isn't something that has to happen to the extraordinary. You don't have to have the super degree, the 12 degrees. These practices can be put in place with the money you make. JB talked about it earlier in his presentation, how he's seen people who make significantly less and have better practices save much more money than those that make the hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So it's a mindset, it's practice. I want to open got a question. So open it up to you all for questions. So if you stand, state your name, I'll come with the mic, and that way we can hear you and the people online can hear you.
My question is for you, Melinda. I was tempted to clap while you were talking about your story, just because I think the statistics are that most Americans have less than $500 in savings. And you, I think you said in your 20s, were able to buy a property in cash. And so, whatever it is that brought you to that mindset, to have that money available to buy a property in cash, was that based on a decision you made later in life, or do you think or feel that was based on the influences you had as a child and the sort of philosophies or practices that habits that you learned as a child from the people around you that allowed you to have that money when you buy the property? I think you're a real anomaly for being able to have the money to buy a I'm just.
No, thank you for that. And I will tell you it's a combination of those things. So at that time, my background, my parents weren't savers. My mom had maybe 14 credit cards, and I used to sit with her and my dad when bills came in, trying to figure out who was going to get paid. And all I knew is I didn't want to do that. So that was the nugget that said there's got to be another way. So I just started saving because I didn't want to do that. And I happened to have $2,000 saved, and I used it for my sister. But fast forward to me, when I could see living without a mortgage, that came out of my travels. I travel a great deal, and I travel to places that humble me. And when you get outside of the US, the world is different, and people are living on less. So I would come back with this sense of guilt because I want the big house and a nice car, but people are making it on less. So every time I would go somewhere, like this year I was in Guatemala. When I came back, I started making different decisions about, I don't need that. And so when you don't need it anymore, that means the money doesn't control you, you control it. And so I started saying, I called my advisor and say, hey, where can I move this money? So my experiences in seeing the world and being and serving in communities that are doing more with less really put a sense of guilt on my heart that I was being irresponsible, and in some ways ungrateful. So that's where it came from. Place yourself in positions with people who are doing extremely well, but also go to those places where people are doing a great deal with a lot less.
Yeah, about that. There's a really good application too called Digit, and there's a bunch of them out here now. But like, if you have trouble saving, similar to you, Melinda, my family, I didn't learn financial literacy from my parents. We learned together as adults, right? And both my parents had great jobs, but they didn't practice it. Same idea. Coming home, looking through credit cards, trying to figure out which one we're gonna pay. 4 car notes, 2 kids in private school, mortgage, trying to survive because my grandfather worked on the railroad. They didn't know my grandfather, the other one was a steel worker. So we didn't learn these things. We learned them as adults together. And so as I've gotten more and more savvy about finances, and friends like James and Rendell, who you'll hear from tomorrow, they've helped me. And one of the apps that I use is Digits. And Digits is an app that takes money out of your bank account and saves it in an FDIC insured savings account for you for both a rainy day and a savings fund. You can set your limits of what those are, and you don't even notice it. And it uses an algorithm to take a certain amount that you won't miss. So it looks at your spending over the course of time, and it uses machine learning to understand how you're spending money. So for me, it's probably that $15 a day I'm spending on lunch that I don't need to spend every day, and then $5 from Starbucks. Stop spending that, and Digit takes that out every day and just stores it. And you'll look up and you'll have $1,000, $2,000 before you know it when you add those things up. Those small amounts add up very quickly. Who else has another question?
Hello, my name is Brianna. I'm a senior at the University of Miami. I'm kind of in an interesting position because I'm a young person that does not have student loans, and I want to know how I can capitalize on my financial position now. So what advice would you have for someone who doesn't have loans to make the most of my financial position and invest or find other ways to build wealth?
I got to jump on this one. So first of all, I want you to be part of my research. Actually, we'll bring me to a case study if you wouldn't mind. We'll talk later. I don't want to embarrass you. I've had an idea, so you were at that 10 years after, are athletes who had no loan debt in better positions, or people like you with no student loan debt, are they in better positions than those who do have it? From some anecdotal stuff, the answer is no, because I had it, so I didn't have Digit, so I just spent it, and we went to the club, and I said, don't worry, come with me, I'll pay for it. So let's do something like, or here's an idea for you. If you know some friends and have some idea who do have the student loans, what's their student loan debt? It's a debt that you don't have. Let's just make it $300. That's $300 that you don't have going anywhere. So if you had $300, that's $3,600. I hope I did the math right. By the end of the year, right? So if you kind of take that mindset, because once you start building, and then hey, there might be a property for $3,600 now versus $2,000. Okay, then there's that rainy day funds. So there's all these things that to me you can take. Plus now with that free cash, you could choose to, hey, maybe your employer has got a great deal with their 401k, maybe they don't. Maybe you've got some money to use because there are some other things that you might be able to do with like a Roth IRA and stuff. So there's some just things that you could do to put yourself in a better financial foundation that most people aren't thinking about their foundation. Set that early, and then you won't have to worry about it down the road.
I'm Joe Tucker, a recent graduate of Purdue University. And let's see, I got a couple questions. But I'll say, first of all, coming out of college, how important do you guys think it is to either gain capital or start building assets to get like passive sources of income? And I know, well, when I think of passive sources of income, building assets, I always go to like real estate or investing. And I want to know what you guys' opinion was on other passive sources of income.
I would just say, one of the things that's not talked about in regards to health challenges in the genesis of the Black community. A lot of people say it's cancer or other things like high blood pressure or whatever. But the number one cause of health-related issues in the Black community is financial stress. Yeah, we saw that in spades in 2008 where the financial crisis hit. People losing their jobs, worrying about maintaining their home, paying bills in their life, like it'll deteriorate your health quickly. And so one of the things I like to tell people all the time, the panel sure agrees, is get into the point where A, you acknowledge that money is a tool, and then two, figure out how it can work for you. And so psychologically, you get to the point, and I use this jokingly, but I'm serious. If you get to the point where most people say, when do you get paid? 15 to 30, real quick, not even a 2-second response. But you get to the point of like, oh man, I get paid for that, I forgot. That tells me that the job is solid, you probably got some investments, you have a couple of real estate properties where you get some real income from, you're not worried about it. So if you think that way, then I think your plan to get there will kind of reveal itself to you. So whether you have an appetite for real estate, vis-a-vis investing in homes, maybe a group of people flipping, which can be stressful. I've tried it. My flip attempt turned into being a landlord. It worked out eventually, but it was painful in the beginning. you really learn how much you believe in something when you can finance it yourself. And I went through that and survived. It was not fun. And this is in 2008 too, by the way. So it was like the extreme of extremes. So whether it's like flipping properties or landlord or just having a recurring income stream, which my thing with being a landlord is when I tenant calls and said the dishwasher's broke, I'm like, you have a new one? 5 days. Oh, there's a draft in the window, I will send someone tomorrow. Because that's my thing a month ago. I was like, you're not spending the house that I. And so that's one way. The best thing is one way, whether you have a financial advisor and he has an investment plan for you, just not really worried about it. You're like, I'm gonna work for the next 20, 25 years anyway, so whatever I have then is gonna be that matters. And then, you guys are entrepreneurs. you guys are engineers. Like, you create stuff. So you're like the quintessential entrepreneurs. Like, you create something that no one has had their hand on, and you put that patent on it. That is the ultimate recurring revenue stream. I can't tell you people I meet in the finance field or playing golf somewhere, like, oh, what's that dude do? Oh, this dude made this. I remember one time I was in the Caribbean, and I saw this crazy house we were jet skiing. I was like, what did that dude do? He made the cell phone. I'm like, what? I mean, just so like, don't discount like what you're working towards now as it relates to your career. Because in your position, like when you're on something, you create something, you're not negotiating terms. You're like, this is what it costs. Are you in or out? So you're de facto already in the private equity business. So you put your skill set together, and you know, I say this with complete respect, and I mean this seriously, and don't be apologetic about it. Black people in the professional services field are diamonds. Why? Because there's not a lot of us. And the white community is acknowledging the brotherly of America. They may not like it, but they're acknowledging it. But most white people in business understand that for their survival going forward, they need us. So if they can walk into a room with you as their partner, that helps them win the business. You learn from them if you're younger. You say, you do this for a couple of years, but until I figure this out, I'm out. You win there too. So you have the money you make from your job, you do the excess funds, you put it aside, invest it in the market, you change to somebody else, maybe some real estate, and then you get to the point where like you forget what they can pay. That's the holy grail. And very attainable.
That's excellent. It's funny because my role at Chicago Scholars is basically, I tell people I'm a salesperson by trade. I sold tech and IT, and now I sell talent. It's the easiest thing I've ever had to sell. Most of the companies we work with recognize that by 20, if they want to remain a going concern, that they have to have talent of color in the organization, because by 2044 or 45, depending on how you look at it, the country will be majority minority. And so companies aren't just looking at planning for now, they're planning for 50 years from now. And they know that they have to attract talent of color. So what he's saying is absolutely true. Black and brown people in professional services are the diamond mine. Engineers of color, you guys are so highly recruited. I get calls every day from AbbVie, GE, Allstate, Google, Pure Insurance, I've Facebook, name a company, they're calling us to figure out if we can help them. So you are in high demand, which means that you have a value that you can set your work for price. Before we close out, I want to make sure that I give each of our panelists just a couple minutes, a minute or so for like closing thoughts. And anything you want to share. I know we didn't touch on everything. We didn't get to credit, we didn't get to there's so much. Hopefully you come back tomorrow and you can take part in the summit tomorrow and hear more from our panelists, but I just want to give them a couple thoughts to close out on. And, start with Kendall.
I just want to say that the first step is the fact that you guys are here tonight. Say you're around like-minded individuals. There's a lot of nuggets that are laid. But I want to echo the fact that I'm your mentor. You can't do it by yourself. It goes back to it takes a village. We can go on different models and slogans, what it takes to be a successful person. So kudos to you guys for coming out tonight. I hope you guys have learned something new tonight.
What I would say, I heard Walter Bond, if you don't know him, follow him. Awesome, gotta follow. So he gave this example, and I live by this now. He said there are three types of people, and he's comparing them to fish, people to see. He said there's the shark that swims around the water, and he's just moving, and he moves at whatever pace, and he's just killing it in the water, right? Owns the sea. The second is the suckerfish. And the suckerfish job is to attach themselves to the shark. They're keeping the shark clean so the shark can keep going and doing what it does in the water. And then there's a leash. It just attaches itself to something, it just takes from you. And he said, what it is you don't want to be the leash. You don't want to be someone who just takes and doesn't give. You need to decide in your life, when are you the suckerfish and when are you the shark? Be a suckerfish. Attach yourselves to sharks. You're absorbing what it is they can pour into you, but you're also pouring into them. So I walk through life deciding in every moment, when am I a shark and when am I a suckerfish? And so as you honor and you embrace being a suckerfish, you're always learning. You got mentors, you're reading. So as a result of that, what ends up happening is you stop confusing your current position with your potential. Because you're always a suckerfish at any point in your life in certain areas. So that would be my tidbit to you is look at your life, where are you a suckerfish and own that, and where are you a shark?
A couple things. Someone asked about books to read. So there's a book called Wealth. It's just Wealth. It was written by Lucas. I don't remember his first name right now. He also teaches a class, by the way, at University of Chicago. And it's primarily for people, I think, who have about, families have $10 million or so in net worth. And he helps you figure out the Kindle and I know what the heck we're doing. So that's kind of what he teaches. But inside the book is some wonderful nuggets. And he comes from a family that I believe is the Campbell soup family, like War of the Campbell soup. Now, I bet your mama can make some better soup than that. But this thing, he's writing a book about wealth, and you'll find out about how much money you can get the book. Okay. So that's one of the things to me to get you into a mindset way past where you'll probably be able to get to yourself. Especially for the younger people, but probably for everybody. You're engineers. When you're going to build a structure of some sort, it starts with a solid foundation, right? You don't build it in, you got to start with a solid foundation. So too often on the financial journey, people jump and they try to get into, hey, can I do this thing? Well, I just get it done for me. Well, just get it done. Just give me something to get it done. I don't really want to think about it too much. But instead, start to get the solid financial foundation. 2008, 2009 may come back again. Whatever might happen into the property or whatever, you want to be able to be there. So if it shakes, you might jiggle a little bit, but nothing's going to topple. And too often, that's the problem that we have, especially if people are quote unquote living paycheck to paycheck. My final comment is, I'm also a certified divorce financial analyst. I don't want anyone to have to go through divorce. I've been through it myself. It's not a very enjoyable situation. But too often, ladies, I hear stories that says, yes, I had a college education, I'm as smart as he is, but I let him handle the money. I don't know how much we have. I don't know if he's hiding assets. I think he probably is. So don't get in that position in the first place. Stay involved. Learn about what it is that you have. Make sure it's titled. Make sure it's titled the way you expect it. Honey, I love you. You want to give me a kiss? Just make sure.
So many levels to that, but I would just say, a lot of financial advice and conversations were actually today, but I just want to close personally. 2 quotes for you all to consider. My 2019 resolution and commitment to myself is dare to be great. I think as a Black society, we're talented, we welcome a lot as a culture. We talk about doing great, a lot of times we don't put the work in to be great, even though we're really capable. So my whole motto for 2019 is just dare to be great, and everything comes with that. And then my last quote for you all is, don't let your memories be bigger than your dreams. And I just think with you all being Black engineers, not only do you have a chance to be transformative for the way people see us as a community and what we're capable of, but you are a living example of the generation behind us. And so when you think about, over time, ethnic groups have been attached to as it relates to success. Fortunately / unfortunately, the two fields that our counterparts attach Black people to in terms of being successful is athletes and entertainers. That's great. You know, I listen to some trap music on the way over here from work. I indulge in it too. But is it our legacy as a people? No. But if we can have images of, you know, the successful Black investor, one of the most prominent Black attorneys, poster child of, you know, best engineer ever, who happened to be Black, doctors, scientists, whatever. The more we can make that the conversation in mainstream America, the better our community will be for generations to come. So I encourage this group to take that on as a challenge as it relates to being the best of the best in the engineering community and doing your part to bring the generation behind you to be bigger and better than you all are today.
Let's get up for our panel.